Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
Welcome to another episode of Food, Freedom, and Fertility. My name is Caitlin Johnson, and I am one of the hosts here at Food Freedom Fertility. I'm a registered dietitian, a functional medicine expert, and a fertility-focused practitioner specializing in PCOS. I host this podcast with Sophia Pavia, who is another fertility registered dietitian with similar training. And today we're doing a mini episode and we're talking about some really practical tips on what to do if you are a picky eater. So real food, real life suggestions for those of us that may have really strong opinions about how our food is prepared or how our food tastes. So let's dive into it. Do you struggle with picky eating? Do you live with someone, potentially even your partner who you're trying to make babies with, who struggles with eating? When you're trying to eat for fertility, I know that it can feel overwhelming. I know that it can feel like every food decision matters. And if you make the wrong one or you have a bad, air quotes, day, that you're going to struggle to ovulate this cycle, or maybe you won't make enough progesterone, or whatever it is you are concerned with that you feel like is standing in the way of you and fertility, food can feel that high stakes. But in this episode, I want to break down for you simple, low stress, maybe even stress-free hacks to help with picky eating so that you can get nutrients that you really need without forcing yourself to eat foods that you don't like. Potentially, maybe this episode is going to help you start to like foods that could nourish your fertility better. But no matter where you're starting, whether you're difficult with navigating textures, you have strong food preferences, you feel stuck in a food rut, you are trying to figure out how to take your cultural foods and make them fit a fertility-friendly diet, we're going to try to upgrade what you're already eating and not flip the entire script on you. Sneak more nutrients into your familiar favorites, find easy swaps that can still do some heavy lifting, make a big difference for you, and offer less intimidating options. If you listen to us and have been around here for a while, you know that we love to recommend things like eating organ meats. Okay, that's not for everyone, but liver is one of the most nutrient dense foods that you can get on the planet. If you don't love liver, I want to talk to you about simple ways that potentially you could incorporate it, but it's not all going to be that extreme. Buckle up for this episode. It's going to be quick, fun, and super useful. So, the first suggestion that I'm going to give you is that I want to meet you where you already are. Okay. If you have ever done a diet before, you are familiar with this idea of Monday we start or next Saturday we start. You pick an arbitrary day on the calendar that you're going to start eating differently. And then you learn the rules. What are the rules to eating keto? Or what are the rules to eating vegan? Or what are the rules to eating carnivore? That's the newest thing that I feel like is everywhere. And then you learn those rules and you stock your kitchen or your pantry with foods that maybe you know a little bit about, maybe you've prepared in the past, but now it's going to be the bulk of your diet. If I can tell you one way that you're going to completely fail at something, it's to try and incorporate something brand new into a behavior that you have 4 times a day. Okay. So you eat multiple times a day. And if you're used to eating a specific 1, 2, 3 things at breakfast, have a similar rotation at dinner time, have the same snacks every afternoon. If all of a sudden I come in and upend that, you're not going to last very long because we're creatures of habits and we want to go back to what's comfortable. So my first piece of suggestion as a former super picky eater is to meet yourself where you are. You don't have to overhaul your whole diet. We want to upgrade potentially what you already eat. So, for instance, if you love bagels and every morning right now you're eating a bagel with cream cheese and you're having it next to your cup of coffee, well, we have a huge blood sugar spike that's happening because bagels are actually really high in carbohydrates, very low in protein. Cream cheese is not offering enough protein to really do much to help balance your blood sugar. So instead of saying bagels are totally off limits, you may never eat a bagel again, maybe we do a couple things here. We say, no bagel that's sweet. We switch over to a savory option. So instead of a cinnamon raisin or a blueberry bagel, we get an everything bagel or a sesame bagel. Instead of eating a whole bagel, we're going to eat half of a bagel or go get one of these like bagel thin brands that they're thinner on purpose. And so you're getting a little less carbohydrate in them. So maybe we switch over to something like that. And then on the side of that, we're going to have a couple scrambled eggs or a couple boiled eggs or a piece of chicken sausage so that we're increasing your protein and changing the whole breakfast tone from sweet and creamy to savory. Okay. Options like this are small shifts, but they can make a really big difference in terms of your energy throughout the day. So we want to start with where we are. It might be helpful for you to jot down for a couple days, either just in a notebook or in the notes app on your phone, or you could do something like Chronometer and type in what you're eating every day and look for meals where there isn't much color. So there's a lot of white food or white and beige food, not a lot of fruit or vegetables, or high levels of carbohydrates compared to protein and fat. Those are areas we need to take and shift a little bit, okay? If you're somebody that doesn't like eating eggs or you can't eat eggs, then breakfast meats are a great option of getting protein in the morning, or cottage cheese or Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt with a nut and seed granola would be a great option. Greek yogurt with a nut and seed granola and some berries, even better. We've added protein and fat to that breakfast, and we've added fiber with the berries. So we're looking for where do we have areas that need upgrade? And we may not completely overhaul it, but we may just zhuzh it a little bit. We're nudging it in the direction of where we want to go. Do you always order a spicy chicken sandwich when you go to Chick-fil-A and it comes with bread and fries on the side? Well, why don't we switch that over to either a grilled sandwich and you still get the bread, or chicken nuggets and you still get the fries? Okay, so we're looking for options where we're going to make little shifts, small shifts. Maybe instead of getting the fries, you get a side of their kale salad. We're looking for areas where we can make simple switches, swaps, and upgrades. What about drinks? What if you're picky when it comes to drinking water? You don't like drinking water. Drinking water is bland. It doesn't taste great. You're not excited about it. There are so many options these days to avoid something like soda or juice in a sugary, sweetened beverage that you can move over to like a sparkling water or adding lemon or lime juice into your water, getting some of those little electrolyte packets, or even I see these like squirty things people put into their water for flavor. People who tell me they don't like the flavor of their water either have been brought up drinking everything but water, or they have gross tasting water and they're just getting water out of the tap and it's got a minerally taste or something that's, residual in your pipes at home. And so maybe getting a filter water option or reverse osmosis water filter underneath your sink could be really helpful. Okay. So I want you to meet yourself where you are. If you hate drinking water, maybe we add a little flavor to it. If you never have a fruit or a vegetable at a particular time of day, let's add that to the mix. If you love white foods, and in a second, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my history with white foods. We need to add more protein and we need to find more color. I think it's funny when Sophia and I decided to talk about who was going to record this episode as we were brainstorming ideas, because historically I was the most picky eater. truly, like the most picky eater. When I was 3, my mom sent me to my aunt and uncle's house, and my aunt forced me to eat salad, and I gagged and threw up on her. Then I went back a couple years later, and they forced me to eat raw carrots and tomatoes, and I fought, and had to do it before I could leave the table. That was never my mom. She never forced anything. But this aunt and uncle, they were like, this child needs to learn how to eat some vegetables. And it didn't work. It actually had a very opposite effect, I would say, where I was I had this like trauma response to my history of any time I had really tried vegetables that I could even remember. So Uncle Kevin and Aunt Beth, I blame you. No, I'm kidding. But now there's almost not a vegetable that I would turn around. Okay. So if you were to serve me a vegetable today, raw, cooked, just about any form, I will eat almost any vegetable and typically enjoy it. Part of that is just growing up and continuing to be offered food and having good experiences with those offerings and eventually trying it as our taste buds change. When we're little, bitter is something that just jumps off our tongue. It's something that we aren't very interested in. And yet we learn how to drink bitter drinks like coffee, and we learn how to drink bitter in our alcohol. We learn how to have bitter in chocolate. So we develop a taste for this different part of our palate as we grow. Okay. It becomes more palatable. And for someone like me, had I not moved away when I did, out of my parents' house at just turning 17, I probably wouldn't have been exposed to vegetables if I'd gone straight to college. Probably wouldn't have eaten very many in the dorm rooms, but I went and lived with friends, and we took turns making dinner, and there were a lot of vegetables that got served. And slowly over time, because I didn't want to be the odd person out at the table who didn't try or eat any vegetables, I slowly ate more and more. And the more I ate, the more I realized I actually liked vegetables. And from that time at 16 to now I'm 39, believe it or not, I have developed not just a love for vegetables, but I make them delicious and convert non-vegetable eaters all the time. In fact, I made a dinner at my house the other night that was French themed, and I roasted vegetables with just a little bit of avocado oil, good salt, and herbs de Provence, which is an herb mixture I don't use very often because it's got some lavender in it, but we had a French themed meal, and give me a challenge, people. I will try and win over everybody. And truly, everyone at the table was like, these are the best vegetables I've ever had. And the secret was roasting them at a really high temperature, 450, so that they got super brown and caramelized when that vegetable hit the fat and the heat hit it at such a high temperature, and good finishing salt afterwards. These vegetables were incredible. I put little cherry tomatoes on the pan, and they burst and had this sweetness to them. Like I can't tell you how incredible the vegetables were. Everyone raved about the vegetables, no less. So there are ways for us to incorporate and learn to eat new vegetables, and we're going to talk about that next. So if you want to improve egg quality, if you want to improve sperm quality, if you want to improve your digestion, we need to eat things that are bright in color and full of fiber. And just about any plant is going to come naturally packed with fiber. And just about any plant, other than kind of our grain section, has a fruiting body or a seed that we eat that is bright and vibrant. Think about pomegranates, think about blueberries, think about the leaves and the green leafy vegetables like kale and spinach and arugula and radicchio when it's like bright purple and pink. There are so many options for color out there, but oftentimes we need to learn a great way to prepare them so that they taste wonderful. Hey, Food Freedom Fertility listeners, we're taking a break from this episode to talk about our sponsor, Tempdrop. One of the reasons why Sophia and I love this brand so much is that it's an all-in-one solution, and it's so easy to use. You wear this Tempdrop sensor on your upper arm during your sleep, and then in the morning when it's convenient for you, you sync it to their charting app. If you've been tracking your fertile signs for a while now, you'll know that this means freedom. And isn't this the Food Freedom Fertility Podcast? In order to accurately track your basal body temperature, you need to wake up at the same time every morning. But what if you're a shift worker or your schedule differs and sometimes you sleep in and sometimes you don't? That's one of the reasons why I love this tech so much. Tempdrop uses the latest scientific knowledge to bring you an accurate method of cycle tracking and identifying your fertile window. Tempdrop's sensor continuously monitors your basal body temperature while you're sleeping. And then in the morning, you open the app on your phone and you sync the data. And what that means is that it's not transmitting information from this sensor next to your arm to your phone all night long. And I don't know about you, that gives me a lot of peace of mind that I'm not exposing myself to radiation all the hours that I'm sleeping. Because this tech makes tracking your temperature so much more accessible and really takes a lot of the brain power out of it. You don't even need to charge it every day. This is one of the reasons why I personally use Tempdrop to track my own basal body temperature. Make sure when you go to tempdrop.com that you use our discount code exclusive to our Food Freedom Fertility listeners. That code is FFF15, or you can head to the link in our show notes of all these episodes. Click on that link and you'll get 15% off today. So, here are some tried and true ways to help improve your enjoyment of eating vegetables. 4 strategies for increasing your consumption of vegetables. First of all, my mom, especially the other night after this meal I'm citing right now, grew up in the 50s where they over-steamed. They ate vegetables that were steamed and came popped out of a can. Now, any vegetable is better than no vegetable, in my opinion, as long as we're really talking about a vegetable. I would not classify corn as a vegetable. Okay, corn is more like a grain. But broccoli, asparagus, green beans, these are things that a lot of times people of my mom's generation had straight out of a can. And oftentimes hated them. So they didn't make it to the table that I grew up at dinner time. And so the first thing that I realized when I moved out of the house was that there was a whole world of vegetables outside of carrots and tomatoes and cucumbers. Okay. There was so much more to go on. So the first thing that I would recommend is don't be like my grandma who steamed vegetables. Gone are the days where we believe fat is bad for you. Fat is actually critical for you, especially when we're trying to grow babies, improving fertility. And like when you're actually pregnant, we need a good amount of fat. Your baby's brain is going to be formed mostly from the fat intake that you have. So if we choose to pan fry in a little butter or oil or roast something at a high temperature quickly, we're going to bring out a lot of flavor that these vegetables may lack in their steamed or raw form. Okay. It brings out this kind of natural sweetness and this caramelization or browning. In school, I learned this as Maillard browning. I think it's spelled Maillard. Fat against something that's not super wet and heat creates this browning. It's the same thing that happens like when you grill bread for grilled cheese or when you pan fry chicken thighs with the skin on and you get that really beautiful brown crispy texture. There's a reason why that texture and that crunch is so good beyond the crunch itself. It's that browning, it's that caramelization factor that happens. So one of my first suggestions, if you're learning to like vegetables, is for us to create this scenario where they're going to brown well. So you need 3 things. High heat. So I would say 400 and above, but if you're really roasting vegetables to love them, you want a high temperature, like 450. You need it to be dry. If you wash your vegetables like asparagus right before you put it on a pan that's going straight into the oven, those asparagus spears are going to be wet. And when the wet hits the hot temperature, what's going to happen? It's going to evaporate and steam. And so we're going to cook the outside of the asparagus first with steam instead of with heat touching fat touching the pan, or touching the air. So we want high temperatures. We want a dry vegetable. So wash it when you come home from grocery shopping and let it lay out in the air for a little bit and dry, and then put it in your fridge. Or wash it before you leave for work in the day and then come home and it will be ready for you. It will have just air dried throughout the day. So we want to wash it. We want to allow the heat to touch this dry vegetable that we have. So that can either be by having direct contact with the pan or enough of the air in the oven to touch the edges of the vegetable. So for instance, if you've ever roasted broccoli or cauliflower, can you remember how like the very tippity top of it got brown and then the bottom of it, the part that touched the pan, also got brown? Okay. But if you smushed all that cauliflower or all that broccoli in and against each other, the air is not actually getting as close and in those little grooves and little nooks and crannies of the vegetable. So having a large enough cooking vessel, whether this is on the stove or in the oven, is really important. When I cook asparagus, no spear is really touching each other. Now, granted, when you do things fast, sometimes you have to make allowances. But if you're learning to like a new vegetable or you're learning to like any vegetables at all, we want high heat, we want fat, and we want heat touching all around that vegetable and it not being wet with water. So we talked about heat, we've talked about dryness and it not being wet, and the point of spacing things out so that it has opportunity to kind of touch all the edges. And then the last piece that really helps with this browning concept is a little bit of fat. Butter, lard, bacon grease. Oh, I'm blinking at the moment, but they're healthy fats. If you're cooking hot in an oven, we're going to stay away from olive oil above 400 degrees, but maybe you consider avocado oil. I love my most favorite way to make asparagus, and everyone always asks me what my secret is a little bit of olive oil or a little bit of avocado oil in the pan, dry asparagus spears, a nice sprinkling of salt into the oven. And then when I pull it out at the very end, I drizzle a little bit of sesame oil and kind of move the asparagus in the pan around the sesame oil. That little bit of like slight umami with the oil flavoring and the salt. So good. Now, those asparagus are going to be wilty and mushy if you overcook them, and they're going to be wilty and mushy if they're wet when they go into the oven. So remember, high heat, dry, a good fat, and I guess there's a fourth. You always have to season your food if you want it to taste great. You need to add salt to your vegetables, okay? Roasting brings this out. This is true with Brussels sprouts. This is true with onions. This is true with that dish I told you that I threw tomatoes with a bunch of roasted vegetables, bell peppers. You want to make sure that heat, space, dryness, good fat, and then salt. Okay. When you cook something in the air fryer, this is a similar scenario. A lot of people have these bucket air fryers and they just load them up. You are going to get some really mushy in the middle vegetables or fries if you're just throwing stuff in, stacking it up, and putting it in. You actually want the air to be able to kind of circulate around the food. That very hot air is what is giving that fried texture. If you want it to taste actually like you fried it, you need to add a little fat to the outside. You're not going to get that same browning if it's wet vegetables or if you don't put fat on the outside. Now, the idea of salt is really important here. I use a kosher salt almost always as I'm cooking it. And so I want to say I'm in between like very conservative and very liberal with my salt usage at this point, because I'm always going to try and use a little bit of a finishing salt. And the one that I love, we are not sponsored, although I should write them because I talk about them all the time, is Maldon salts. So it's got this nice flaky, don't get the smoky one, get the one in the green package. It's got this nice flakiness to it. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Just a little bit as you finish something off, it's going to make the flavors, the natural flavors of the food be enhanced and taste delicious. Okay. So you need to do that kind of finishing scenario as well. I also love, and it is kind of the time of year where we're winding this down a little bit, but barbecuing. If I'm going to barbecue steaks, I also love to just throw my vegetables in a veggie tray on the grill, and you get that nice charred, smoky, very hot, very delicious, similar to putting it into an oven with like the fan, or you watch Great British Baking Show and they say 200 fan convection. That's what it is, where they're moving the air around just like an air fryer. The other things that I would say about veggies is pair it with something that you love. So if you love the flavor of Parmesan, roast that broccoli in some avocado oil with a little salt halfway through, add a little bit of garlic, put it back in the oven, and then 2 minutes before it's done, grate some fresh Parmesan on the top, and then, or cheddar, whatever kind of yummy, cheesy situation you love, put that, a little bit of that on it, throw it back in the oven so it melts, and then serve it. So you can do that with cheese. You can do that with a sauce. Potentially you love ranch and you don't love raw carrots, but if you dip raw carrots in ranch, you love them. Marry the flavors of the things that you already love to things that you want to grow a palate for. Okay. I also love the idea of feta on things. If you love feta, you could use a buffalo sauce or a teriyaki sauce or a pesto sauce. Be careful with things like teriyaki sauces or hoisin sauces. They can be really sweet. So maybe use them a little bit more sparingly. But if you need to use a little bit more while you're getting used to a vegetable, by all means. We can dip raw veggies in things like hummus. I love to make a Greek yogurt dip that has Greek yogurt, a little bit of lemon juice, and the everything but the bagel seasoning you can get just about everywhere these days. And then I'll dip bell peppers in it. I'll dip carrots in it, celery in it. It's a great way to get things in. The other way is to blend vegetables into dishes. So you could think about putting riced cauliflower into mashed potatoes. You could stir spinach into your scrambled eggs. You could add shredded carrots and bell peppers to a spaghetti sauce. You could eat half zucchini noodles with half regular noodles when you're making spaghetti. There are ways that we can kind of add and enhance a flavor we're already used to and textures we already love with a little bit more vegetable. I made a salad earlier this week that's like I used rotisserie chicken. I just pulled off, the bone, and leftover noodles from a spaghetti night, and they were kind of higher protein noodles. And then I took I took bell peppers and cucumbers and used my potato peeler and just did long ribbons of them so that they could go into a salad that I was making. So I had cold, high protein noodles. I had chicken. I had those veggies. I added in shredded cabbage and made a sauce out of sesame oil, peanut butter, white rice vinegar, and a little brown sugar with a little soy sauce and a squirt of sriracha. So I had this nice kind of Asian dressing with high protein noodles, or higher protein noodles, a protein, and lots of vegetables that honestly you didn't even really realize were in it because they were long and thin and kind of just twirled around your fork like the spaghetti noodles that were in there. So we try to add these vegetables into dishes that we already like. Likewise, you can do this with protein. If you love eating spaghetti sauce, but you're not a big fan of eating beef, you could add ground beef into your spaghetti sauce. So you get the noodle, you get the sauce, and now we're adding a little extra protein to it. The other thing that's kind of important when we're talking about vegetables is keeping them convenient. So having washed carrots in the fridge, having cucumber slices ready to go, cutting bell peppers so that they're already in strips. You could buy frozen mixtures of things so that it's easy to just throw cut up, broiled or roasted or grilled bell peppers and onions into omelets that you're making in the morning. I often try to pre-chop the veggies on whatever day I go grocery shopping. They're easier to reach for in your fridge that way. They're more likely to get eaten if they're prepared and ready. Okay, here we are. ways that you can improve your intake of brightly colored vegetables and fruit. Fruit we didn't talk about all too much, mostly because it's usually not the thing people are having a hard time eating. But if you do not eat a lot of fruit, especially because you're afraid that it is high in sugar and you're trying to balance your blood sugar, we always recommend pairing that with something with a little fat or protein, like eating your berries with Greek yogurt or having a mandarin orange or two next to half a cup of cottage cheese, something like that. We can do fertility upgrades to familiar foods that we already eat. So instead of just having a white pasta, maybe we choose a lentil pasta. There's a million brands right now that are higher protein options, even normal brands that you are used to eating your whole life, like barilla. I don't know how you say it. Barilla. They have a high protein pasta option that isn't lentil based. They use extra protein from the wheat itself and sometimes pea protein to kind of add it in versus making the whole pasta out of it. And I find that that one has a pretty familiar texture to us. Homemade pizza, maybe instead of having a wheat-based pizza crust, we could use something like a cauliflower crust. You can buy these pre-made and frozen, and then you can add the toppings on that you want. Making small swaps, things like that. Adding in a handful of spinach or cauliflower into your smoothie is another option. We're trying to be sneaky with ourselves, even though we know it's there. If we can pair it with a yummy chocolate protein powder and a little bit of banana and peanut butter, and you throw some cauliflower in there, you might be surprised that it's just extra creamy, especially if you're doing it with frozen cauliflower. It seems to add a creaminess that I think is just delicious. So texture is a piece that I find is really important for people that tend to be more picky. And so if you hate mushy broccoli, eat it roasted or eat it raw. If you don't like apples, maybe you slice it really thinly and dip it into some almond butter. If you don't like cooked carrots, eat them raw. If you don't like them raw, maybe try them cooked. Scrambled eggs too soft or runny, try a egg that's just cooked more and more. Try a hard-boiled egg. Try an oven-baked egg McMuffin type thing. There are lots of options for picky eaters. If you hang out on my Instagram, if you go to the PCOS app, you'll find options, especially for those of us that don't love eggs or need just something different for our mornings and we still need high protein. I recently came up with a recipe that has sausage and a protein pancake mix with cheese and high protein milk that rivals just about any other breakfast in terms of protein intake, but tastes amazing and is easy to eat on the run. So look for resources like that. There are two last things I want to tell you about trying to beat a picky eating habit. One is don't eat new foods on a day that is rough and hard. If you're having a hard day, you've gotten in a fight with your spouse, you bad mark at work or at school or whatever's going on, if it's a really hard day, don't try and eat something that you've been grossed out with your whole life on that hard day. It's not going to go well for you. It's not going to go well for that food. It's not going to make you love that food anymore. You are going to bring your entire body to the table, all the emotions and feelings that you have from your whole day at eating time. You're going to feel those things. Okay. So if you're going to feel things and you're going to introduce a new food, let's make sure we're feeling good things to begin with. Okay. The second thing is while you're taking bites, I want you to think about smiling and being happy. I want you to think about a great thing that happened. You're going to bring all that memory or even what you're doing with your body and your smile to that new experience, and you will be more likely to like it. Research says this. So smile while you're taking bites of new food. Okay, I said two things. There's one last thing I want to talk about that just came to mind, and that is that you're not in this alone. Look for the support of your partner if they love a food that you don't love. Ask them to help you prepare it. Ask a friend that is really good in the kitchen, who everything they make makes you go, this is great. If somebody came up to me that's in my day-to-day life and was like, will you teach me how to make vegetables taste good? Do you know how excited I would be to jump at that with them? So really consider that. Consider the people you know in your life that love you, that would love to pour into you, and ask them for help in this regard. You're not doing it alone. If you're somebody that leans into your faith practice, I would like to invite you to ask God to help you with this, because He made our bodies, He made the world, He made vegetables and meat and all these things. And He did it for our good, and they're good for us. And so invite Him to the table. If you're already in a ritual of praying before a meal, take time to ask God to help you grow in loving this food. I was thinking today about how there's this area of my life I want to get better at. And I'll just be honest and open about it. I love to get like a coffee when I'm out and about, but it's really expensive, and I can make coffee at home. And I feel like it has kind of become this thing that I don't love about myself. Like certain things trigger it, and I want this special coffee drink or whatever. And I don't feel like I'm honoring my husband with our finances when I do it. I don't feel like I'm honoring God with my food choices when I do it. Um, and so I was praying as I was driving my kids to school today, thinking, God, help me hate my sin. Not that this is like this huge sin area, but it's not a healthy area of my life. I feel a little guilt around it. And I think it's because there's some sanctification that could happen for me here. And I was like, God, help me with this. I'm seeing this. It's a recurring theme. It's happening over and over. And I know you can help me with this. I'm not doing it on my own. So if you're approaching eating food, broadening the food choices you have, invite God, the creator of the universe, into these decisions and ask Him humbly for His help. You sit down and eat multiple times a day. You have multiple opportunities to invite a very powerful, very loving Heavenly Father into this to help you improve your food choices. I hope you have a great day. We'll see you next week on the Food Freedom Fertility Podcast. Bye.